Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there tonight and certainly had yourselves a wonderful day. And I hope you all have been having a great week out there so far. It's about halfway through it, almost to the weekend. Speaking of your weekend, we do have a big time storm system on the way for your weekend. We're going to give you the specifics on that, the updated information in this video. We're going to talk about severe weather, wintry weather, a whole lot of rain for a whole lot of people. And then we have a pretty large area that could see some very strong, potentially damaging winds with this storm system. There has been some changes today to more of a wintry scenario for certain areas of the country. And just the structure of the storm is trending towards a different look. So we need to talk about what that means in this video. Definitely take advantage of the timestamps. We're going to break down individual areas that this storm will impact and continue just to fine tune the details and the information we continue to pump out to you folks that we've been doing over the last several days, and we will continue to do it over the next few days as we move basically to the beginning of the storm system. So if you folks have not subscribed yet, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And more importantly, if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So let's talk about what's going on right now, because it does have an impact on what's to come, and we can just kind of see the overall movement of the pattern right now. So if you notice, this is the water vapor loop. The whiter colors on your screen indicate more moisture in the atmosphere. The more dull colors, can't speak. The darker colors on the screen indicate more drier air in the atmosphere. So if you notice, you have kind of this dip down here, and then it kind of comes up like this all the way up into Canada, and then it comes screeching back down like this and sort of levels off down here in the Atlantic Ocean. So if you notice, it's coming from the northwest to the southeast right here. That is what we call a northwest flow. And this typically gets pushed up against the Appalachian Mountains, and you can have what we call a northwest flow snow event. And that is why you've been getting some snow in the Tennessee, North Carolina mountains, the Virginia mountains, West Virginia, and we just still have a good bit of energy just kind of flying around this area. We've had some kind of festive flakes flying around throughout the Northeast today. I think we had some in New York City, and there's just still a good bit of energy associated with what we call a trough dig right into here. This is a ridge. You see how it's bulging to the north? We have pretty quiet weather directly under this high pressure. So this ridge is moving and will kind of flatten out. It won't be as tall right up here into Canada. We'll kind of flatten out and we'll bring above average temperatures for a period over the eastern U.S. before our big storm system moves into the west coast, eventually over the Rockies, and then across the middle to eastern portion of the country. So this is what's going on right now. If you tune in and watch the video tomorrow morning, this area that's going up like this will probably be more so like this tomorrow morning, okay, as this ridge continues to move east. So moving pattern right now, it's just been a month where we have not had one kind of pattern just stuck in one area, meaning it hasn't stayed cold in an area for very long, and it hasn't stayed warm in an area for very long. The pattern just continues to shift, and just no concrete pattern right now. So let's just dive right into this. We're going to compare the Euro with the GFS and just kind of take a broad look at this at first, and then we're going to dive into the severe weather threat. And then we're going to really zoom into individual areas based off the Euro, and really we'll be able to look at the pivotal weather site, and it'll do a great job in kind of showing, well, the best job it can before we get into short range models, it kind of showing the structure of this precipitation, the storms, and the rain change in the snow. So let's start off by looking at the European model. And here it comes right off the dot. You have a low pressure that kind of goes over the middle of the country, right over the Midwest. This could bring just good old-fashioned rain for areas of the upper Midwest, a little bit of snow on the top portion of this system. And the big change over the last 24 hours is that this really just isn't a closed-off upper trough anymore. It's really not closed off. It's more like an kind of like an open wave now. So it's more so like a strong cold front with a lot of energy along it and out in front of it now. So you continue to keep this going. You're getting into, at this point, the middle of the night, Saturday and a Sunday. And yes, there will be a severe weather threat for Saturday, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Just kind of showing you a big sweep of this storm system in general, okay? We keep this going. Just good old-fashioned rain right over the middle portion of the Mid-South, the Ohio Valley, down into the Deep South. Okay, down here could be thunderstorms because it's warmer. But the cold air is trying to catch up with this precipitation. Okay, we get into Sunday morning. We're probably going to get the development of some type of low pressure right into here. This is going to enhance the precipitation back west. We start to get into Sunday about midday, and there's the low pressure showing up. Now, it's trying to show two low pressures. That could be the case with a weaker low pressure, stronger low pressure. But in general, just know there's going to be another low that pops off this basically frontal boundary right into here. So we stop it here. It's around Sunday midday, just a wind-driven rain. These are probably thunderstorms down here in Georgia, Alabama, moving into the Carolinas, maybe in the panhandle of Florida. If you keep this going, what's really interesting now is we start to move into Sunday evening. Look at this rain changing to heavy, wet snow down to the southern and central Appalachian Mountains, all the way up into Pennsylvania, western New York, even Ohio. But it gets really interesting late Sunday night into just the middle of the night, Sunday night into Monday morning. And look at this. This is the latest Euro. Only 114 hours out. This is really trending towards a snowier situation. Now, you got to look at this low pressure. That's a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure, a weaker storm system than what we previously were looking at. But, man, I mean, the cold air is really catching up to this now. This is still a very strong storm system, a lot of winds with this, and you really just get a wind-driven rain that switches to a wind-driven heavy wet snow in areas of Pennsylvania, western New York, all of West Virginia, the higher elevations in the mountains of North Carolina, Virginia, even Tennessee. And you keep this going, guys. And I mean, the rain snow line gets all the way into almost central Maryland, changes to heavy wet snow sometime Monday morning in like Scranton, all the way to the Catskills and like almost to the Poconos. Doesn't quite make it to the big cities of like New York and Boston. But look at this 988 millibar low pressure right over southern New England. Heavy, wet, wind-driven snow that it's switching to from the rain in areas in New York. I mean, it's still snowing like crazy back in Maryland, West Virginia, the higher elevations of Virginia, still snowing back into the southern Appalachian Mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina. And this is just a wind-driven rain up here in the Northeast. And you continue to keep this going, and rain switches to snow for other areas, maybe a little bit of lake effect snow behind this. Now, what does the GFS show? Okay, here comes the system. There goes our first low. This first low on the GFS is a little bit more potent than the European. It has a sub 1,000 millibar low flying over areas of the upper Midwest late Friday night into Saturday morning. And this could dump some heavy snow somewhere in Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. We got to fine tune the details on this. It would bring heavy snow to areas of the western UP. We got to watch this little low right here. Are we going to end up getting some kind of gap in the precipitation right here in like the Mississippi Valley? It's possible, but you start to get in this to Saturday about afternoon. You see this green down here? This could be in the form of thunderstorms down in Arkansas, western Tennessee, areas of the deep south. So you keep this going. You're getting into the middle of the night, Saturday night into Sunday. Here comes the other low developing. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody doesn't even get a drop of rain from this in the eastern U.S. now, as you get one dominant low on the GFS here and then another dominant low or two that gets going off this boundary, this sort of strong cold front now that's more so open wave. We're getting into Sunday morning, just good old-fashioned rain across the deep south, mid-south, Ohio Valley, starting to move into areas of the interior sections of the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic. And you get into Sunday afternoon, this could definitely be thunderstorms down here. Another low might try to develop here. This could be thunderstorms down to the southeast for sure. In fact, it probably will be. And we'll get a better look at this here in a second. I'll show you exactly what I mean based off the Euro. But, you know, you start to get into Sunday evening. Some of this rain starts to switch to snow, but it's not as aggressive look compared to the European, which has like ridiculously heavy snowfall rates falling. And you keep this going, and then you get into the middle of the night, Sunday night, switches heavy wind-driven rain to heavy wind-driven snow in areas of Pennsylvania, New York. And yeah, this would dump several inches of snow, even off the less aggressive GFS. And then this heads on out. So let's talk about the severe weather threat with this. Let's just talk about impacts in general. So Friday, there could be a severe weather threat in areas of Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and even Northeast Texas. We'll kind of fine-tune this as we get into like tomorrow and then Friday morning. But then you start to move to day 4. It has a 15% risk still for Saturday. This has been here for a few days now. Then the yellow means there's a 15% risk of a severe, there's basically a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in any given location, okay? Then you get to day 5, which is for our Sunday. I would not be surprised if at minimum we end up getting a slight risk somewhere in the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, the panhandle of Florida. Right now it says predictability too low. Okay, I thought maybe they would drop one when we were waking up this morning. That was not the case. But I do think severe weather is likely Sunday also. So let's talk about the ingredients that's really driving this. Let's talk about kinematics first, which is the favorable wind energy for these storm systems. Well, for these storms in general, okay? Here we go. This is what you call the mid-level jet. These are winds like 18, 19,000 feet up in the air. We call it the mid-level jet. And as this big trough digs down, the good news is you know, it was looking like it was going to be that negatively tilted trough. It's not really looking like that anymore, which means in general, the storm system does not look quite as strong, but it could be just as dynamic with just storms and heavy snow on the other side of the system. But you got this open wave that's digging down to the deep south, and you see this 90 to 100 knot mid-level jet, winds basically going over 100 miles per hour, you know, 15 to 20,000 feet up in the air, moving over areas of Tennessee, just basically the entire eastern U.S., all the way over the Appalachian Mountains. This continues to increase, and this is basically a kinematic that's telling us there's a lot of wind energy. And this starts off really Saturday, severe weather threat right into here, and you have a lot of kinematics here, a lot of wind energy aloft that supports this. And then we get into Sunday. There it is. It moves to the southeast. Now, I know you're thinking I can see it up in Kentucky, Ohio too. What about the severe weather threat up here? You got to remember, and we're going to talk about this here in a second, you're lacking a moisture return up here. So you're lacking thermodynamics. It's just the colder side of the storm. The kinematics don't change, okay? But up here, there's still a lot of wind energy to deal with. So that's why you could have, if this switches to snow, it could be a wind-driven heavy snow. But there's a lot of wind energy down here, and this continues to move across the eastern U.S., the mid-Atlantic, the southeast, eventually into southern New England, where I think it begins to max out sometime Monday morning. And you have incredibly strong winds aloft, and even the surface, where I think we could have the potential for a high wind threat for southern New England and the potential for a damaging wind threat for just areas along the I-95 corridor. We're going to talk more specifically on that here in a second. Then we look at thermodynamics. You got kinematics and thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is like your moisture levels, your surface temperatures, your CAPE levels, which is your storm fuel, lapse rates. We're going to really just talk about the dew points right now. Dew points climbing all the way into the 60s, all the way up into the Texarkana region. And then we start to move into Saturday during the day, which is the favorable time for storms. You get a moist sector that builds all the way up into Tennessee. Dew points climbing to 60 to all the way up into Memphis. Jackson, mid-60 dew points. And just pretty humid air for early December standards. And then we get into Sunday. Dew points creeping all the way into the 60s in Atlanta, Augusta, Columbia, Charlotte, Raleigh, all the way up to Richmond, Virginia. Okay, you add this, right? You add this with that wind field that I just showed you over the region. So this is Sunday afternoon, right? You see these dew points? Sunday afternoon, and then you look at Sunday afternoon right into here. It's a lot of wind energy flying over this, kind of overlapping over these favorable moisture levels. Now, your CAPE levels are probably going to be low. This will definitely be like a high shear, very low CAPE event, meaning, in my opinion, I think this is just going to be the potential for a damaging line of storms. I don't think you're going to get a tornado outbreak with this kind of setup. Could be wrong. So speaking of my folks in the Deep South, let's talk about what this looks like based off the European. But keep this going. We're getting into Saturday. Saturday afternoon. Remember, there is a 15% risk of severe weather in this area. And look, you see these kind of pockets of yellow and orange. This indicates thunderstorms Saturday afternoon right into the Mississippi River Delta, the Delta region, Mississippi River. Same thing. Thunderstorms into northern Louisiana. You see some thunderstorms up here in northern Alabama. You keep this going and watch what kind of happens. You know, you're starting to get into the wee hours of the morning Sunday. There's that low developing. Thunderstorms all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. And we're waking up Sunday morning to some big-time storm potential in Alabama, moving into Georgia. Even got some thunderstorms already off the coast of the Carolinas. And look what happens. It kind of develops into a line. More consolidated line getting into Sunday afternoon. You got some nasty storms moving through the heart of Georgia, the panhandle of Florida, getting into the upstate of South Carolina, and then this continues to sweep through. I mean, look, you got a line of storms moving in late Sunday evening, and you already got snow showing up in the mountains. And this continues to sweep through. Now let's move a little bit north. This is when things get a little bit more interesting. All right, same thing. You're getting into Saturday. Well, this is Friday. Friday, we could have some storms in this area with this first initial low. And then here comes the next low. Thunderstorms, here it is, riding up the Mississippi Valley. Right at the Mississippi River. We keep this going. Thunderstorms are possible late Saturday night in Nashville, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama. And then we get into Sunday morning. There comes that additional low that tries to get going. This rain starts to switch to a wintry mix up here in northern Kentucky, Ohio. And this is the Euro. And you have a wind-driven heavy rain moving over the southern Appalachian Mountains. Could be some wind damage with this. And then we start to get into Sunday afternoon. This begins to leave the picture. And then we'll go on and switch a little bit on up the road, a little bit further northeast. And getting into Sunday afternoon, there's that low. Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Look at this. There is a line of intense storms moving to basically to the east side of the Appalachian Mountains, right? Immediately behind this, cold air is catching up, and you're switching to a wind-driven rain, but dramatically dropping temperatures, to a wind-driven snow in West Virginia. It's basically the western side of the Appalachian Mountains. Look at this little mini, I'm not going to call it a squall line, not sure how this is going to set up, but look at this line of storms embedded in all this moisture, and this keeps going, and man, look at this. This is right in the middle of the night, Sunday night. Heavy snow based off the Euro showing up in central Pennsylvania, West Virginia. This would give accumulating snow to Pittsburgh. If this is please don't hold me to it. This is just one run. But you got 996 millibar low pressure flying over just west of the I-95 corridor into eastern sections of Pennsylvania. This is bringing wind-driven rain and storms. I mean, but the potential for like 50, 60 mile per hour winds into New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and eventually getting into southern New England. This is like the wee hours of the morning, Monday morning. This switches like rain to a wintry mix even as far south as Washington, D.C. All right, and then we move a little bit further up into the northeast, and here it is, guys. It's very interesting. 988 millibar low pressure Monday morning riding over New England with a nasty line of storms with intense winds heading right towards Boston and just affecting everybody in southern New England with heavy, wet snow right behind it. Look at this sounding right here. 28 degrees, completely saturated column all the way up into like 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. That basically just tells me this is like nuclear snowfall rates falling. I mean, just unloading snow if something like this was to happen. And you keep this going, it starts to get interesting up in Maine, and then it heads on out. Just some leftover snow for the higher elevations. So it's going to be very interesting. Not sure why I have that pulled up, but we'll just keep on rolling here. But as far as those winds, I'm really worried about the Delmarva all the way up to southern New England. And this is a predicted wind gust based off the Euro. And here it is. It starts to show up down here in the middle of the night Sunday. Jersey Shore, 50 mile per hour wind gust. And then look out here on Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod. You guys are getting like 65, 70 mile per hour wind gust. I mean, 55 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts would be possible for like Boston, Rhode Island. This would be a significant windstorm if this plays out, and very strong winds even further west into the interior sections of the Northeast. So this is going to pack a lot of winds. This could downtrend. It very well could. Speaking of that snow, let's compare the Euro with the GFS. European, this is how much snow it's showing for this system coming up this weekend. It wants to dump a couple inches of snow, into the Smokies, all the way up into Boone. The higher elevations of Virginia would get just a few to several hour period of like heavy wet snow that would add up to several inches of snow. It hits the mountains of West Virginia very hard with 8 to 12 inches of snow. But if you compare it with the GFS, significantly less snowfall totals. Definitely nothing as dramatic as what the European is showing. Let's move a little bit further up to the Northeast. Look at the Euro. The Euro is an all-out winter storm for West Virginia, Western Maryland, even areas of Virginia. Pittsburgh would get snow from this. Pennsylvania, all the way to Scranton. And then right in the middle of Pennsylvania would get an all-out winter storm from this. And then New York, the state of New York, would get slammed from this, especially like all the way up to like the Finger Lakes, Binghamton, up to the Adirondacks. And this would be a big event for you guys. But the GFS, it's a little bit more scattered and smothered. Waffle House reference there. It's not as big of an event, and it's a little bit weird the way it looks. So we need to continue to figure this one out as far as the snowy side. But this is trending more towards a significant winter weather side of this, where maybe 24 hours ago I was thinking like the severe weather threat would be the main topic with this. That's no longer the case. We continue to flip. So this is an interesting scenario. Could potentially end up being a big winter storm for certain areas. But I do want to mention and get a little bit closer for my folks up here in the upper Midwest. This first low could bring just a wind-driven rain up here for the Great Lakes region, if the Euro is correct, with some back-end snow that could filter in sometime this weekend for the UP and Michigan. But for the GFS, it is definitely a different-looking scenario. The GFS, like I said, there's that heavy wet snow right in here, drops significant snowfall totals into northern Wisconsin, the western UP and Michigan, and then it heads on out. In fact, this is how much snow the GFS wants to pump from this little old compact, strong, low pressure. There's an area that gets, 8 to 12 inches of snow here in northern sections of Wisconsin, and then the western UP and Michigan. We'll have to watch this low pressure. This could trend into something bigger for you folks up here. So I don't want to just ignore you guys just because it looks like the eastern U.S. is going to see the more high-impact event. But I'll keep you guys covered. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a fantastic evening.